Hello, and welcome to a co-collaboration episode between the Partial Historians and, over to you guys,
Totalus Rankium.
That's a very exciting way to say it. Hello,
yeah.
it's me, Rob, and
Jamie, who does nothing.
And it's Dr. Rad.
and Dr. G.
Hey, double the fun.
Double history.
Yeah, and multiple genders.
Oh my god.
Oh, we've got it all going on.
We really do. So I believe, Dr. G, that we're going to be doing a collaboration on Augustus today.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
Fanning myself.
I was just retching a little. Oh god, there it goes again. Sorry, I'm going to try and control that.
I don't know why you don't like him. He's a good-looking man. He's got statues and everything.
So I believe Totalus Rankium, you guys have talked about Augustus before. Did you have any strong opinions on this particular princeps?
A bit of a wimp when it came to fighting.
Pointed with his fighty ability, I'm going to say that. But political ability.
Very savvy.
Yeah, we were happy with that.
Yeah.
So I think...
Well, I'll virtual high-five you on your first point. Hacha!
Do have a point to make about that, actually.
We thought today, because there's so many of us, we'll have some sections that we might cover. So we might start off with looking at Augustus's childhood. All right, Dr. G, so tell me about Augustus's childhood.
Oh, look, he's often accused of having a low background.
Yeah, to say the least.
Mark Antony claims that Augustus's great-grandfather on his paternal side was an ex-slave and a rope maker.
It's really not good. It's not great.
So someone needs to make ropes. Ropes are very important.
You do need ropes.
You do.
Yeah, but you don't want that guy running your country. Come on.
On the other side of the family, apparently he's the grandson of a baker and a money changer.
Ouch. In Roman terms, that's really not cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so low background, really.
All right. But I believe he does stumble into some more illustrious family members, and this is kind of...
Well, yeah, his father does attain a senatorial rank, so he becomes a praetor, and then he's given a special commission to go to Macedonia and deal with the remnants of Spartacus's and Catiline's armies.
Yeah! Spartacus! And only hardcore listeners will understand why I'm so excited.
Do you guys have any details on Augustus's childhood that have stood out for you?
Well, I think the main thing that you get from Augustus's childhood is how ill he was when he starts off in life, and how he's described as this sickly little boy with spots all over him in the shape of constellations of stars, which I thought was interesting. Yeah.
That's kind of beautiful in a way.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
It's total propaganda. They're just trying to make him sound cooler than he is. He had acne, all right? He had acne.
It was an interesting just little detail in there that, yeah, he's covered in spots, but they're interesting spots.
Like
Maybe
Dumbledore has a map of the underground as a birthmark.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was. I think he did suffer from ill health throughout his life. It's amazing he managed to make the age he did.
Yes.
I feel like we're being deliberately baited here. We've only just started.
Hey, I'm coming in hard because I know that you're going to crucify me when it comes to Tiberius. So just be prepared, all right?
All right, so he's covered in like spots that are in the shape of constellations. I think that's quite ingenious.
Nah.
His father dies when he's 4 years old, so that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
So he's effectively fatherless.
Which was fairly standard back then, though. It was hard to move, especially in our early episodes when we covered the early emperors.
Oh, yeah. His
They
father
all
died
had
at a young
fathers who
age.
died. It was fairly
Yeah,
standard.
yeah, oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Look, yeah, mortality is, obviously not great in the ancient world. And he had a strong mother figure, to make up for it.
Yeah, there's nothing like a Roman mother.
Yeah, exactly. Italian mama, hey, Augustus, what are you doing?
She seems to have a lot to say up until the point where he runs away from home and is being like, I've got to claim my inheritance. And she's like, don't you do that. He's like, I've stopped listening.
I'm doing it anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I do love that part where he he turns around and, jumping ahead here slightly, but he's got a decision to make. Should he accept the name of Julius Caesar? And everyone around him says, no, don't do it. This is a foolish thing to do. His stepfather in particular. It's like, they will kill you.
When you look at how many stab marks are on the body of Julius Caesar, you can kind of see how it could be a liability for a teenager.
but he does it, and that's, I'd say, the first impressive thing about him.
Yes, and I'd say that this actually factors into part of his dealing with his own ill health. So I now have a theory about this.
Okay.
Wait for it. So I feel like Suetonius in particular is maybe offering a subtle reading on the fact that Octavian has to make up for his frail health by overcompensating all the time.
Yeah, well, he certainly does that.
Like ill man syndrome, like small man syndrome. This is ill man syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll call it sick man syndrome.
Yeah.
He gets to the brink of like dying, bounces back, or his life is endangered in some way that's also related to his physical frailty. And he really has to make everybody pay the price for that.
So in other words, what you're telling me is he takes it out on everyone around him like a little bitch. But it always seems to happen at very convenient times. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to that, but continue. All right.
I'm not saying the fact that he's a great killer is related to the fact that he's sick all the time, but I'm just saying there seems to be some parallels.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Yeah, so his connection with Julius Caesar, when does that kick off? Because I think that happens, obviously, when he's a teen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Rob, Jamie, step in.
He's invited to go off to Spain to go and see what his great uncle's up to. And oh dear, he's too poorly to go, which is a shame.
And the injury.
Yeah. I mean, something we didn't cover in our episode of him, which perhaps would have painted him in slightly better light, is that when he does finally work up the courage / gets well enough to go, he is in a shipwreck as he goes to Spain. That must have been exciting. And then he's got to fight his way to Julius Caesar whilst Julius Caesar's in Spain. So maybe we're being a bit harsh on him there.
And he's during the shipwreck and his run to Caesar, his knee was fine during that one.
Yes, running away from the bad people.
Flares up everywhere.
Yeah.
It's amazing what will happen when your back is against the wall.
Got himself out of a tough space, and he clearly impresses Caesar in this moment because it's around this same time, because this is all happening around sort of like 46, 45. And we know that Caesar also writes his final version of the will in 45.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, and this is the one that becomes like the one that's held by the Vestal Virgins. Woo, to my ladies.
Yeah.
And the one in which Octavius is formally adopted as his son.
I am just going to point out, though, that the reason why this all happens is because typical of this dynasty that will happen, the Julio-Claudians, there's a lack of male heirs in Julius Caesar's life. I'm just going to point that out.
You're telling me he doesn't have a choice?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not saying... I know that there's, I know that there's obviously the child with Cleopatra, Caesarion, but he's never acknowledged him. And let's face it, there's virtually no one else on the scene that's a blood relative we're talking about.
Are you trying to say that a sickly great nephew's not the logical choice for your heir?
I'm hedging in that direction. I'm just saying it's not as impressive as it first seems, all right?
Aspersions.
Okay, continue, Dr. G.
I choose the spotty one.
Yeah, that's right. The one with Aquarius on his backside. All right, so he's named in the will. It's good, but it's because of a lack of heirs.
I think everybody's pretty surprised. Antony is pretty pissed. That's fairly clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mark Antony by this stage has become pretty close with Caesar, and he is much older and much more experienced than a teenager.
Yeah, like Antony's in his 40s by this point.
Yeah,
he's a man of the world.
Yeah.
He's seen some things.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. All right, so is there anything else notable about his childhood? I know for him his political career sort of takes off while he's still a teenager, so it's kind of difficult to define where his childhood ends, I suppose.
Well, that's a very serious childhood, isn't it? It's serious times, but you just get the impression there wasn't much time for laughter in Augustus's life.
You also get the impression that if you had a colouring book, he'd colour a lot in blacks.
Yeah,
Lots of reds.
He's an angry teenager.
Angry, restrained. Yeah.
I think he had a few good years in those crucial, what we now know as the crucial years, 0 to 5. Things were all right, but then things get pretty serious after that.
Yeah. Although he did meet his bestest ever friend around this time, because he meets Agrippa. And if he hadn't have met Agrippa, then this would have been a very different podcast.
Yeah, no, Agrippa, I think, really is the unsung hero of Augustus's life that not everybody would necessarily know about.
Almost emperor material, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
If there was going to be a Roman version of Beaches, it would be about Augustus and Agrippa.
And I think, to me, what's so surprising is that Augustus outlives Agrippa.
Yeah, well, he outlives everyone pretty much, doesn't he? That's the weird thing about Augustus.
I know. For somebody who is frail of health, he doesn't do so
almost
badly.
As if he was milking it, perhaps.
Don't point that as being a credit thing. Yeah, but Agrippa was a few years older, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so what happens towards the end of his childhood that sort of catapults him into full adult mode?
Oh, well, he does pick up a number of different things along the way. So, he does that funeral oration when he's 12,
right?
For his grandmother, Julia.
Yeah.
This is in 51.
Right.
And we're like, the poor kid, just stand up in front of everybody, talk about your grandmother for a moment.
Please. That is standard fare for a Roman child. Sorry, a male Roman child.
He gets to take part in Caesar's African triumph, even though he wasn't involved at all.
Well,
Caesar's like, join me. And he's like, okay.
I feel like Caesar is obviously sort of pushing him forward.
I think Caesar realizes he's got a lack of heirs on the table.
Yeah. Aha, it's on tape. She said it.
Damn it.
Yeah.
In 48, he gains the toga virilis, so officially becomes a man.
And that sounds like it's around the time that he would normally assume it anyway, though. That's standard. Yeah. Okay.
And he's pushed forward into a praefectus position in 47. So he becomes the praefectus urbi feriarum latinarum causa.
Yatch.
Really? Well, there you go.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Fancy.
So what exactly does that give him the powers to do?
That's an excellent question.
Okay.
So this is the praefectus positions are supposed to be like minor senatorial roles,
right?
For like otherwise non-serving members of the senatorial cohort.
Okay.
But it's also to give the young up-and-comings a chance to sort of learn the ropes of some of the stuff. So they're supposed to be representing the consuls.
Okay.
In the Latin festival that happens on the Alban Mount.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like it would be an onerous task.
It seems like a fancy title with very little behind it.
Yeah.
But, I get it.
It's like when you get that I've tried really hard sticker at school, isn't it? It's got like silver. And it's like, well done.
Yeah.
You can have this.
Yeah.
That means nothing to anyone.
And there's also just some really dud jobs that need to be done. And clearly the consuls don't want to go to this festival. So they're like, if we nominate somebody else to go in our place, then we can just get out of this.
See, I feel like this is something like that the British royalty do. What do you guys think? Is this what the Queen does? She's like, go and do that. Go to Australia. It's too far for me to travel now.
I mean, she's like 94, isn't she?
Is she 94
She's
now?
90-something. Yeah.
Is she?
Oh, yeah, no, I totally agree. That's what she should be doing,
Yeah, look, but she hasn't been to Australia for a while, guys.
Oh, no.
I apologise on the Queen's behalf.
Thank you. Now we've got the recording.
We accept your apology.
Yeah.
He also does become a pontifex. So he joins the Pontifical College. So this is something that must be a leg up from Caesar, I would say, as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So all of this happens to him when he's quite early on in his career, quite young, and before the age of 19.
Yeah, this is definitely...
Because age 19 is an important year for Octavian.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all happening. So he's definitely, his name is out there.
All right. Any other details about childhood before we delve further in?
I'm ready. I'm sharpening my dagger. I'm ready to bump Caesar off.
Yeah, no, I think that covers his childhood.
Yeah, all right.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
childhood, done and dusted. All right, so I don't know about you guys, but for me, the personality and the politics are all kind of mixed up together.
Right. Okay. I've highlighted a couple of things about his personality.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. Well, when you suggested we look at personality, I just thought of a few key things I thought about his personality, not necessarily in chronological order here. So I don't know if you wanted to cover the death of Caesar first.
Well, I think the death of Caesar, in a way, I mean, for me, it sort of highlights, I think, a key personality trait for Octavian is his ability to take advantage of
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah, his determination at this point, because it's really hard to get a sense of who this person is. It always is in the sources anyway, but up until 19, he's pretty much a blank slate. But then his determination to push that he is now Julius Caesar, and he will be referred to as Julius Caesar, and he will get the troops on his side, and he will become everything his new father was. At the age of 19, to make that decision against everyone's advice is... I've got to give him credit for that. That is some real determination he's showing there at an early age. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. I mean, even when I'm talking to my students and stuff about this, it's hard for them to imagine in their sort of a lifestyle doing that kind of thing at that age. But particularly in a society like Rome, we're technically still in the Republic here, people, and there's meant to be certain ages where you assume, the higher political offices and that sort of thing, and there's definitely a respect for age, particularly older men in this sort of a society. So to take that step definitely marks him out as someone who's unusual and someone who is courageous. Okay, I'm going to give you that. Enjoy that.
I think
my jaw is on the floor.
Well, I think Mark Antony's response to him probably summed up most people's response to begin with, which was just, sorry, and you are?
Yeah.
No, you just go away. We're really busy at the moment. What is it that you want?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, well, he is. He is, he's a mere baby in terms of Roman politics.
Well, this becomes, I think, part of what is happening here is related to what happened with Pompey early in his career.
Okay.
Because Pompey gains this reputation as the butcher.
True.
And he's quite young and he's raised his own army.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you've got this moment in politics where in the wake of Caesar's assassination, Octavian travels across the Italian countryside and basically picks up all of veterans along the way. And by the time he gets to Rome, he has an army.
Yeah.
And
which is crazy.
He sits outside and he's like, I demand my inheritance. And they're like, are you crazy? And he's like, I do have this army.
So, who's crazy now?
If you put it that
way. These are Caesar's men and I am Caesar's heir. And there's a moment of capitulation there.
Yeah.
And Cicero gets in on this as well. This is like a hugely pivotal moment for Cicero's career because even though he doesn't seem to support this kind of
behavior.
Strength through numbers and violence.
Yeah.
He does turn around to the Senate and say, look, I think we need to endorse this kid, mostly because he's made good on his threat to continue marching on the city.
Yeah.
And they're like, we have to head this off at the pass. And so they do make special concessions to him and they allow him to hold positions earlier. They waiver a whole bunch of those age criteria for him.
Yes.
Do you get the sense that Cicero and some of us thought this was an opportunity to use him against the likes of Mark Antony and the Caesarian faction that were starting to split?
I think definitely there is a sense in which Cicero assumes that if they have his ear, they might be able to persuade him.
Mm.
And he is young and maybe he can be reasoned with.
Reasoned with. Manipulate. Just say it. Manipulate.
But I don't think that's how Cicero would think about it, and I think there's a sense in which they're like, look, he just needs to be educated on the proper ways of the Republic.
Which is my way.
And this is an anomalous time.
Yeah, you don't turn up with an army and demand things.
Yeah, but since you have turned up with an army and demanded things, maybe we should try and work together. But Octavian's health is not good during this period either. there is a whole bunch of sort of problematic moments where he ends up in battles
Mm.
where he's trying to fight against Antony, but he's also sick
That
in northern
damn me
Italy.
again.
Convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, this is where I think that his illnesses seem to be pretty convenient, where he can let other people do the dirty work and he gets to lie about.
Oh, but look, I don't want to say it's an illness of convenience, mostly because it happens also at some really particular important times.
Yeah, yeah. No,
that he can't get out of.
yeah,
you
no,
would
I
think.
think he is sickly, but when someone is like does have a reputation for being ill all the time, they could potentially pretend sometimes. You never know when he's being genuine or not. This is the problem. Anyway, I won't dwell on that too much.
We've all worked with people like that. We know what it's like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so that's they're his bold personality traits. Any other key personality traits, Dr. G?
Oh, look, to me, it's all just sort of mixed up with this cunning that seems to run throughout all of the political maneuvering.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah, he's sharp. Yeah, he's definitely sharp.
Oh, yeah, and as soon as we head into the second triumvirate, where it seems that after initial sort of like antagonism between Antony sort of being like, I don't want you to have your inheritance. I've made Lepidus Pontifex Maximus. What do you say to that? Octavian finds himself in this situation. I refer to him as Octavian, though he would refer to himself as Gaius Caesar.
Yes.
But I just don't want to confuse him with Julius Caesar. And they all get together and then they decide to systematically get rid of all of the opponents of Caesar.
Yep.
Yes, and see, this is where I don't like him, in the sense that he's freaking ruthless, man.
Yes, and ruthless is my second point. Determined was my first. Ruthlessness is my second. The conscription lists were not nice.
Yeah, they're brutal.
Yeah, they estimate there's like, 4,700 victims.
Ouch.
Yeah, and the sources we've got seem to blame Mark Antony and Fulvia more so, but I mean,
Which again is convenient.
he was clearly more than willing and enthusiastic for this to happen, and yeah, so it's a streak of ruthlessness that seems to be ignored a lot when people talk about Augustus. That isn't just here at the start. You see bits of it, if we can believe, especially Suetonius, who's not hugely reliable. But I mean, some of the stories when he's older, he still maintains this ruthless streak, almost a savage streak. There's one story we picked up on in our episode on him, on how he tore the eyes out of a man because he didn't want to lose face. And that's not the Augustus that I imagine. It's really not.
No, I kind of feel like his personality, I mean, this is obviously the times of the prescription lists and that sort of thing. That's when he gets the reputation as being like the kid butcher, kind of Pompey-esque, like as you were saying before. And I kind of feel like Augustus benefits from the fact that, like, for some people they die too late, but he lived long enough to have a significant chunk of time to reform his image and to do a PR makeover and to pay people to help him to do this PR makeover, with the poets and that sort of thing. And so I think he gets to take advantage of the fact that this really quite nasty, ruthless, brutal period of his life kind of starts to get overshadowed by the more stable part. Yeah. What do you have to say to that, Dr. G?
Well, I'm not going to disagree. I do think that this ruthlessness underpins everything about his continuation in power.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So the reputation that he develops through the prescriptions, because he's clearly interested in getting rid of some of these people.
Yes.
And I'm going to go to Suetonius because it's like what an evocative image. He's not restrained in victory. He sends the head of Brutus to Rome to be thrown at the foot of Caesar's statue.
Blah.
Gross.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the battle in Philippi. That's nowhere near Rome. By the time that head gets there, it's going to be grotesque.
Ew.
Yeah.
Didn't the head not get there? This is me trying to remember something 2 years ago, but I'm sure the head never made it back.
Maybe it
but maybe I'm
didn't.
not remembering that.
I know.
correctly.
I can't remember either, actually.
I'm not sure. I'm just running with Suetonius here, and I feel like this is a great story because I'm like, well, if we just imagine Brutus's head for a moment, it's like a 3-month journey. He's being decapitated. What state of putrefied flesh are we at by the time it gets there? And everyone's just gonna be like,
Just one
Maybe
poor
they preserved
person.
it in salt.
Maybe.
A barrel of salt, like dried up like a raisin.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I do remember that after the battle. Not only is he sending heads off through the post, that was when he.
Roger's first delivery, I believe.
He again, this is me remembering something a couple of years ago. Didn't he force a father and son to decide which one was going to be executed, essentially playing rock, paper, scissors?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah,
he did, and then gets the one who survives to be killed anyway.
I didn't remember that bit.
Oh, that's brutal.
I mean, if you've gone to round 5 of rock, paper, scissors and you've come out on top, you get murdered anyway.
So this leads him to have this highly negative reputation where they come out of Philippi and Antony gets applauded for his gentlemanly behavior and victory as a general, and Octavian just gets openly reviled by some of his opponents for being somebody who seems to take pleasure in creating painful situations.
Yeah, and this is where I mean, if he had succumbed to an illness at around this time, we would be dealing with a very different reputation.
We would.
Yeah.
We would.
Yeah.
I think this all connects in a way because the prescriptions, first of all, eliminates a whole bunch of enemies, potentially, of Antony, Lepidus, and Octavian.
Yes.
So that clears the table to a certain extent. Some of their own allies, in a certain way, end up on that list as well. Seems a bit problematic.
Yeah.
Some of the previous legates of Caesar end up on this list.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there's eliminations from within. So it's creating a really destabilized political atmosphere where nobody's sure whether they're safe or not.
Yeah.
And I think this is setting up for the future purges, because even after Octavian becomes Augustus and seems to have established his power position, he continues to engage in senatorial purges on a pretty regular basis.
Okay.
And just changing what the requirements are for senatorial entry.
Yeah, because that's one of the key powers. I mean, when, as you say, once all his rivals have been eliminated, once the second triumvirate's fallen apart, he's defeated Antony, blah blah blah. Once he starts working on his sole power, he essentially creates this position for himself where he's sticky taping together all these republican positions and powers, so that he has the ultimate power. And one of them is censor, which gives him the control over the senatorial list, isn't it? Yeah, which is a pretty crucial.
Yeah. So entry to the Senate is dictated on a number of terms, some of them monetary.
Yeah.
But the censors are the ones who ultimately decide whether you've met the requirements or not.
Who gets to be in my clubhouse? Okay, cool. All right. So is there anything else personality-wise that you want to highlight before...
Yeah, there's a couple of things. He's hypocritical, personally.
Hello.
Excuse me?
I think I'm in love.
Going towards the end now, when he brings in all the morality laws, and you can see politically why he's doing it, linking it to his political savviness. But I mean, he's again, if we can believe what we're told, he was certainly no angel himself at home. Stories of one I came across recently, which I missed when we were doing the episode. Apparently, he had a secret special attic in his house.
Yeah.
For
this is a Jane Eyre level of crazy here now, isn't it?
But that's where he'd go to do things that he perhaps didn't want people to know about. It was the ancient version of a sort of private browser history. That's
incognito mode as a room.
Very 50 Shades of Grey. Just come to my secret attic.
Yeah, and then you've got stories of Olivia choosing some people for him to sleep with, and how much this is true, we're not sure, but at the same time, he's dictating to everyone else how they should live morally, and let's face it, he wasn't following it himself. So you do get that sense of him being a bit of a hypocrite.
I think that's true. And I mean, some of the things, as you say, it's hard to verify. Like, I'm going to let Dr. G take a run at those sex stories. But even if we look at what we can verify, the fact that he ends up divorcing his wife Scribonia basically the minute she's given birth to his child, so that he can take up with the heavily pregnant wife of another man, that's scandalous.
That's quite impressive.
What do you think about the sex stories? Because, we do talk about these, Dr. G.
I think this tells us that a man in frail health might have more to offer than you first imagined. Don't overlook the sickly one, that's what I would say. This is a guy who can essentially rock up at a party, see somebody's 6 months pregnant wife, and be like, hey, you, let's go into the other room. She says, hells yeah. They come out, and everyone's like, wow, I'm pretty sure they just did it. She's glowing in a new way. And then they get married within 3 or 4 weeks. It's pretty fast turnaround. Like by the end of the year, the first marriage is over and the second marriage has begun.
And once she gives birth, he's like, and you can go and live with your father.
What a moral guy he was.
A paragon of virtue,
Yes.
you could say.
It's the kind of story you would happily put in with all the stuff that Caligula's famed for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
His relationship with Livia is interesting, though, because obviously they don't have much luck producing children, which is one of the things that Augustus is particularly interested in promoting, in this space of legislation that he starts pushing through once he's, the princeps. And I must admit, that's one thing where I kind of feel like I'm willing to give Augustus the benefit of the doubt, Dr. G. Are you prepared for this? I think he must have genuinely cared about her. I obviously, he had a lot to lose after promoting her as this paragon of female virtue. He couldn't really turn around and divorce her easily. But I feel like there must have been some genuine affection between Livia and Augustus. I think they were a bit of a power couple.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
You do get that sense, don't you? And it is really hard to pick up on how relationships really were in such a distance of time. But Augustus and Livia are definitely one of them where you go, okay, maybe there was something there. But even then, he wasn't particularly good to Livia, apart from the fact he didn't divorce her. I mean, is that really the highest standards?
I suppose if that's the standard we're holding them to, then it's not great. He does a lot for the sort of the public image of women. This is the moment where women go from being ultimately exclusively in the house, in many respects, to overtly public in the way that they're presented. And it's not that we haven't seen women, and particularly elite women, try to be openly political before, but he sort of paves the way to make it part of the process of how Rome is run, to have a family at the center.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I kind of feel like that's just a sideline. I don't think he was
It is the collapse of the Republic that we're looking at here.
No, I know, that's what I mean. The fact that it's a family, that's him. That's him wanting a dynasty. That's him wanting someone who's a blood relation from his legitimate marriage, his heir to take over. That's why. I feel like it's an unintentional thing. I feel
kind of conflicted, because I'm I want the elevation of women to happen in history, regardless of how it happens, maybe.
No, I get it, but I don't think you can say that that's score one Augustus. I think that's just a byproduct of his own quest for power. Sorry, not giving it to you.
Damn.
Okay, so what other key personality traits?
I was just going to say, I think we've covered everything I wanted to say on his personality, which I've just realised is quite negative.
Now you're speaking my language.
I should probably state my reasons for liking
Go
Augustus
ahead.
at this point, because it's clearly not a personality thing. I think the thing that I most appreciate about him, and it's in contradiction to my personal politics, is the fact that he's such a savvy political animal.
Yeah.
And he gets himself into difficult situations and he finds ways to get himself out of them again.
True.
And you can't anticipate. I think there's a real sense of the accident of reading history from hindsight, where you can be like, oh, this was all planned and this was all part of the process. He had a really particular outcome in mind. I don't think he did necessarily up to a certain point.
Okay.
It becomes pretty clear.
It's all reactionary. He's got to react to the situation as it occurs.
Yeah, and from the age of 19 onwards, he's in a reactionary mode, and I don't think that we see anything different from him until we get down to about 27, 23, where we start to see a crop of legislation that really enshrines him with particular powers that are extraordinary. And he can kind of sit back a little bit and be like, oh, okay, well, I did win this civil war. I am in charge of all of this. How am I going to figure this out now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the political powers that he accrues and the literature that is produced during this time, the buildings, the Res Gestae, it all sort of shows that he was very savvy in terms of crafting, a pretty thorough personality makeover. But he starts from a position of complete disadvantage, really. Yeah.
The thing that he's got on his side is being named the heir of Caesar, and that's pretty much the only card he's got to play for a long time.
Yeah.
He's got to, see a star in the sky and be like, wait, Julius Caesar's really a god, everybody. To bolster that card up a little bit, because everyone's like, eh. And then he ends up in this sort of shifting balance of power, where in this triumvirate, it's really Antony that's sitting on the powerful provinces. He's got Gaul, and Lepidus is holding Hispania and the other part of Gaul. These are all of the sort of the nice ones to have. And Octavian's given things like Africa, Sicily and Sardinia, which effectively equal nothing at this point in time. And he manages to make a play to switch all of that up after Philippi and gets control of Hispania. And Lepidus ends up with Africa. Ouch.
Poor Lepidus.
Poor Lepidus.
Yeah.
Lepidus really gets a demotion at that point.
Yeah.
And then as they get further into this triumvirate, it seems that Octavian's able to accrue a whole bunch of the really valuable ones as Antony moves east, and he relinquishes the ones in the west.
Yeah.
And this is what sets him up, is that there's some really fortuitous moments that are not really to do with him, where he manages to bolster his own position and is able to work with it.
Oh, yeah, and definitely, the way that he deals with Antony, particularly late in the triumvirate, the fact that he just leaps on Antony and Cleopatra and, what they're getting up to, the shenanigans in Egypt and that sort of thing, he really knows how to go for someone.
Let's face it, if he wasn't against Mark Antony, would he really have done as well? Mark Antony was fairly useless. He really messed things up a lot.
He did misplay things, but I think, as you were saying, Dr. G, because he has the age and experience, and he also has a connection of, he has the political connection in history with Caesar to a certain extent. At certain points, he would have been the more logical choice when you're looking at, I think, Octavian, Lepidus, and Antony.
Yeah.
From a senator view,
Yeah.
We see that in 32, because Octavian doesn't give up some of his powers and the triumvirate has technically expired. And at that moment, the consuls and a whole bunch of the senators leave Rome to join Antony in the east.
Yeah.
They're like, this is over. This guy's crazy.
Yeah, and that's so close to Actium. It's so close to the end.
Yeah. And at that point, it seems pretty clear that Antony's the one with the more secure position. And it's not I feel bad for Antony in a way. And I was like, he's got this reputation, and I think it's a little bit to do with political invective in the source material for being a bit of a drinker.
Just a tad, yeah.
And, being swayed by Egyptian women. But Egypt is the breadbasket of Rome. It's a smart move to try and control that province.
I see. I'd say it's more him going into Parthia and just utterly failing, I think, is where he came unstuck. If that campaign had worked,
that wasn't good.
He would have been fine. But it seemed to destroy him. He just came out of it.
Oh, look, so many Roman men have met their doom in Parthia. Crassus is the one I'm thinking of here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, well, shall we move on to major political events?
There's one big one, even I know.
I mean, this could be a long list of achievements. I mean, you do have to hand it to him here. I'm just going to start off with the fact that he is the first emperor. And yeah, okay, he wasn't quite seen as emperor, but that's how we see him now, and that is for a reason. We have stability in Rome for the first time in, 60, 70 years? The civil wars end. Stability has been achieved, and a new political system is put in place pretty much single-handedly. It's hard to beat that kind of political success. Very few people in history have managed to achieve quite that level.
Yeah, it is an impressive time, and I guess this sort of that establishment alludes to those dates that you were talking about earlier, Dr. G, the 27 and 23, when we've got the first and second settlements, when he manages to secure those key powers and roles for himself.
I can see this being a point of criticism. So if we take like Syme's line of thinking here, where it's like basically he sets himself up like a fascist leader.
Syme was writing on the dawn of World War II.
He was. And this is why I specifically reference the fascist element here, because you have somebody who wanders into a system, takes it down from the inside essentially, and then sets themselves up in a personality cult.
Wow, you're doing the work for me here. Keep going.
and it's like, sure, you've resolved civil war, but at what cost? I mean, you've wiped out the Senate. Prescriptions have eliminated most of political opposition that could possibly exist. I mean, what options do you have at that point? Is this a success that is dressed up the failure of the Republic?
Yeah, and that's kind of how he gets this. That's kind of how he gets the Senate on board, in that he sort of wanders in and is like, well, I guess everything's cool, and I'll just, leave you guys to it then. I mean, of course, there could be civil war again, but whatevs, you're fine. I'm sure they won't be. And then it's like, wait, come back. What do you want?
So, yeah, I think the moment of becoming an imperial entity is massive. And I think it is also a really fraught moment of success. And it's something that particularly the senatorial class continues to really struggle with as well, even through the rule of Tiberius.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, even just looking at the opinion, I mean, Tacitus obviously doesn't write a lot about Augustus, but he does touch on.
But everything is disparaging.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, because he has a total starry-eyed view of the Republic, which he never lived under. But he does, typical senator. He yearns for the days of the Republic and freedom to compete and blah blah blah, and so he looks at Augustus as he's the architect of all of that. So he is the bad guy.
All right, so success as an emperor. Other successes.
Yeah, come on, give me some good stuff. I know you're dying to.
Things that he did in terms of politics. So I think the Battle of Actium obviously stands out. And this leads through to the fall of Alexandria. And this is kind of the moment that secures a lot of Egypt for Octavian. I referred to it as a province just previously, but it doesn't actually become a province until Octavian gets there.
Sure. Yeah.
And takes it for himself. And
just going to point out that Agrippa did command.
I was also going to point out that was Agrippa, wasn't it?
Nice.
Yeah, but Augustus, the knee injury, remember?
Yeah. No, he was on the boat for that one, to give him some credit.
On a chair, because his knee.
I mean, somebody told Agrippa where to go.
To Actium. All right, yep, okay, so, yep, Egypt, okay.
Wow,
agreed.
Okay, so that's a success I don't get to have, all right.
Yep.
Moving on.
Yep.
Did you know that the doors to the Temple of Janus were closed twice?
Yeah, but, okay. So the doors to the Temple of Janus are closed in times of peace.
Yeah.
If they were closed twice, what does that mean, Dr. G?
I think that tells us that there's a double amount of peace going on.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Do you guys have anything to say on this Temple of Janus business?
I don't know. It all seems a bit like a political stunt, and but then that's what he was good at. to be honest, wasn't it? He was very good at self-promotion. He knew how to get history to look at him kindly. As you
Definitely
mentioned the Res Geste earlier, I mean, that is just a phenomenal piece of propaganda for him there, where he just goes on a huge list of everything he's done and how he doesn't want any credit for it. He doesn't want anyone to know he's done them, so he has them hammered up around the city with his name on it.
Oh, and over the empire,
Yeah.
Let's be fair. Like, he writes that very late in life, and we don't find evidence that it's up until after he's dead.
Are you suggesting he wrote it and just kept it under his pillow for safekeeping then?
I've just got these bronze tablets. I've got about 25 copies or so. I'm just going to sleep on them so nobody finds my diary.
I'm just saying.
But, okay, it's still a PR move. It's still a makeover. Like, Romans care about what people think of them after they're dead. Like, whether it's in his lifetime or afterwards, I'm sorry, it's the same thing. It's a PR exercise.
I think he had some really, like, limited aims. I'm dragging it away from the PR exercise. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
But I feel like he has some really specific things that he's trying to achieve, at least in the beginning.
Okay, such as?
He wants to ensure the settlement of the veterans.
Okay.
That's pretty high on his list, and has been one of his something that's been on his political agenda since the very beginning, in 44.
Yeah.
And he doesn't seem to be able to really secure it until after the closure of these civil wars.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I mean, he keeps dragging these veterans around for various purposes.
Yeah. But then that's presumably one of the reasons. I mean, yes, they fight with him because they care about Caesar and that kind of stuff, but you presume there's also the payment at the end.
Well, yeah. and at some point, some of those guys must have been replaced by other guys, because between 44 and like 30.
Oh yeah, massive.
A lot of time has passed.
Absolutely.
But this seems to be a continual process. I think we can talk about success in terms of his building program.
And you were going to bring that up.
Who did he put in charge of the building?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. What's his name? I can't quite remember.
No, I can't.
It's begin with an A.
Yeah, it's.
What? No, did I hear Agrippa?
To be fair to Augustus, maybe we can say good delegation skills.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't really expect the emperor to literally, design and build.
Delegate a war, though.
He did.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I think that's the best kind of thing to delegate. Personally, if I was a leader, that's definitely something I'd delegate out.
Agrippa, this looks like one for you.
Got your name all over it. Oh wait, it really does. So what kind of buildings do we get thanks to Augustus?
Oh, look, I didn't really even go into that. He rebuilds all of the temples essentially.
Yeah.
But he does produce a temple to Apollo on the Palatine.
Right, yep.
That's a special one because it adjoins his own house.
Fancy.
Yeah. Separated merely by a corridor.
Well, I believe he also obviously, as a big PR exercise again, he constructs the mausoleum for his family, smack bang in the center of Rome.
This starts very early.
It
does.
Well, isn't that kind of a bit of a Antony's going to be buried in Egypt beside that foreign whore, whereas I am going to be buried in the center of Rome. Isn't that kind of the gist of it?
I think that's part of the gist. Yeah. And it becomes known as the Mausoleum Augusti. But I mean, when it was initially foreshadowed and they start building it, he's not Augustus yet.
No, of course.
So it's just like, this is to the Julii and myself.
Well, I mean, it's not like it's unheard of for a person of an elite family to have a family tomb. Like, that's pretty standard, but it's the placement of it, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of these are on the Appian Way, but the mausoleum definitely isn't. It's on the north side near the Campus Martius, which is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. All right, so there's lots of fancy buildings going on.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to bring up, Dr. G, and rub in my face?
Look, I think what we can say is that he declares the restoration of the res publica.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. Bringing back the
And we can talk about empire all you like, but what he actually does is restores the republic.
I think that ties with what you guys were saying before about him being a bit hypocritical. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, our podcast isn't rating all the leaders of the Republic after Augustus.
No, you need a senator
So
for that.
I think that shows you how successful he was at restoring the Republic.
Yeah.
Well.
Well, what else have you got for me? Come on, bring out the big guns.
I don't know what you want me to tell you. I feel like every time I tell you something, you shoot me down.
Well, you know it's going to get brutal when Tiberius is on the block, so I've got to get my punches in early.
You know, he does receive a lot of gifts in 27.
Mhm.
It's a pretty special year for him.
Yeah.
So there are some things that he does, which is particularly hand over control of the res publica back to the Senate. Everybody's very excited.
Yeah.
It's not an empire. He does retain the consulship, so that's good.
Yeah.
He decides to take the Imperium Proconsulare,
So
power of a proconsul for 10 years.
So that gives him essentially the power of a consul outside of
being a consul, beyond being a consul,
Yeah.
But it's only over provinces that are considered to not be at peace. So there you go.
Well, this is
Very
the
generous.
Key. Okay, let's face it. This is the key to his power as well. For all the fancy schmancy political maneuverings, whatever. Essentially, I think the core of his power is the fact that he gets to hang on to control of the armies, like the bulk of the armies, because he divides the provinces up between himself and the Senate, and he gets to maintain control of the ones that are problematic, i.e. have troops.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
What would you guys say to that?
I mean, if you're tying his political achievements to his military success and his control of the armies, one thing I will give him credit for is something that Hadrian often gets a lot of credit for, which is that he recognised the size of the Republic as it was, and he decided to stop. And he made it quite clear that we shouldn't keep pushing this. We'll overstretch ourselves. And Hadrian gets a lot of credit for that. You don't hear of Augustus getting credit for that very often. And yeah.
Do you know why I feel that is? I feel that is very related to one of the big disasters of Augustus's reign, and therefore one of my favorite things to talk about. Of course, I am referring to the defeat of Varus, which happens very late in his reign, as an actual princeps.
Oh yeah, it makes him sad for the rest of his life.
Well, all 5 years of it, yeah.
Slightly crazy, not just sad. He starts roaming the palace and just shouting, "Give me back my legions." It's
Yeah, well, see, I feel like his respect for the boundaries of Rome, like that this is a good extent, kind of is tied to that event and the huge disgrace that is cast upon Rome, the Roman army.
You know what? Maybe we shouldn't keep doing this anymore. Maybe it's time to stop.
Guys, we made a mistake. I think there is something to be said for that.
That's her way of saying that I'm right.
I didn't say that precisely. Certainly, he holds a lot of the ideas of the Roman army close. So when he does his tour of the East, he does make sure he picks up the standards that Crassus had left there. So picking up standards and retaining them and bringing them back into the Roman fold is all part of his deal.
I'm sorry, did you say Augustus picked up the standards of Crassus? I do believe that there was a person with him called Tiberius.
It was Agrippa, wasn't it? I could have sworn it was Agrippa.
Because lifting heavy things play havoc on your knees as well. I mean, it's...
You know Augustus is frail. So when he does something in the East, maybe it's done by one of his friends. But maybe Augustus gets the credit.
It's done in his name.
Yeah. It's definitely on his list of his own achievements.
And that's how we should judge him.
And he gets the triumph. That's what counts.
I mean, what sort of inscription has Agrippa left behind? All right. Phew, got out of that one.
Yeah.
Augustus for the win.
Okay, all right, yep, sorry. All right, yep.
I'm sure I had other things to say on this, but I don't even know anymore.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna give you something. Let's talk a little bit more about the moral. Let's talk a little bit more about this moral legislation. Okay. All right. So, what's your take, Dr. G?
I think the moral legislation is firstly about controlling the elite in Rome.
Okay. When does he start sort of doing this?
Around about 18
BC.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he introduces a number of laws around 18 and 17. One's to do with electoral corruption. Nobody ever talks about that one.
That's no fun.
Nobody likes electoral corruption, let me tell you. Particularly not under somebody like Augustus. But then he does introduce these two pieces of legislation. We think they're about a year apart. It was very hard to pin them down. But there's the De Maritandibus Ordinibus, which is about encouraging marriage and the production of legitimate children. So you have things like the right of 3 children introduced.
Yep.
So if a Roman citizen woman bears 3 legitimate Roman children, she gets exemptions to have some political and economic freedoms.
Yep.
And then you have on the flip side of that, so that's the encouraging one, that's your carrot, everybody. And the stick law is all about adultery.
Hey.
The de ulteriorius coercendis for punishing adultery, where people are sort of given carte blanche to kill everybody.
Whoa. Kill everybody.
If you catch them playing up, kill them.
Yeah.
If you find them in their secret attic, for example,
with your wife.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why Livia never ever goes there.
And that seems to be a reaction to this supposed, sort of decadent attitude to relationships that the Roman upper class, at least, had developed during the sort of later Republic, and it's apparently carried on into Augustus's own reign, where women are sleeping with men that aren't their husbands, and they're refusing to have children because they want to spend their time partying and whatnot. Outrageous.
Thank goodness we've outgrown that now as a Western society.
Yes,
we don't do that anymore. Yeah. Our morality has grown, I feel.
Exactly. But then, of course, this does trip him up, doesn't it, a little bit, with his own family.
Oh, yes. Things go a little bit pear-shaped, perhaps with his own daughter.
Perhaps with his own daughter. You know damn well he ends up exiling. So he has only one legitimate child in his entire life.
Oh, yes. So this is Julia, the daughter born by Scribonia, the first wife, ill-fated.
The one that he divorced, once the placenta was coming through. That's right. I'm going to rub it in. So Julia becomes his ticket to other heirs. So he marries her off a number of times.
Oh, yes. Well, there's the moment he decides that he needs to... they're traveling east and Agrippa is with him. And then Agrippa falls ill, I believe. Or maybe it's Augustus that falls... One of them falls ill.
I'm giving the track record here.
And anyway, so Augustus and Agrippa are split up. And Augustus, in his wisdom, decides that since they're not together, that maybe they need to just make sure that they're still buddies and all by marrying Agrippa to Julia.
Wise move.
Sounds like one of those 3 a.m. kind of jobs. Here's an idea.
It kind of works out well in that she ends up popping out 5 babies.
Yeah.
Which is good for the dynasty. Yeah. But then, of course, as it seems, Julia might not have appreciated being married to a man older than her father.
Well, I'm interested in on your take on this situation with Julia, gentlemen. What are your thoughts?
Well, Jamie, you probably don't remember this. On our podcast, we quite often talk about people getting to know each other.
Oh, yes.
Julia is where we got that phrase from.
Oh, is
first.
it?
Yes.
Oh.
It's in Augustus' episode. I was trying to politely explain how she got to know a lot of people.
Got to know them very well.
Oh, yes. Yes,
really?
they did.
First on terms.
Like you say, I mean, it sounds like this has been going on for a while, this attitude towards morality, especially in the younger aristocracy. Like if you look at Clodius and his set that he had with Mark Antony, there were rumours flying around here. It's hardly surprising, like half a generation on. You've got the daughter of all-powerful Augustus, and she's being told you must do this, and you're just going to turn around and say, why? Why do I need to do this? Life's pretty good. And she just seems like she just wanted to have a good time. And unfortunately, Augustus really couldn't accept that, because it's fine for him to be a hypocrite, but not his daughter.
Well, it damages his profile, doesn't it? It damages his,
Exactly.
his perceived...
He can control what he's doing.
Yes.
He couldn't control his daughter.
No.
So off to the island she goes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Given that by the stage that he, apparently finds out about her behaviour, which is, well into his reign, and, a number of years after he's passed this moral legislation, it's become really risky in the sense that if her children are going to be his heirs, then he can't have questions of paternity. It needs to all be above board so that these are, so that there's no way someone can try and take them down by criticizing, where they came from. And that always brings up my absolute most favorite story from antiquity, which is when someone allegedly asked Julia, how do you manage to have your children all look like your husband when you're constantly cheating on him? And she said, I never take on passengers unless there's already cargo on board.
Surprisingly modern phrase for a ancient...
Yeah.
But I like the subtlety of it, you know. It's
exactly.
a shipping metaphor. I mean, how convenient.
Up on board, say that.
It's a lot more poetic than I'm up the duff.
Yes.
That's right. Okay, well, is there anything else major politically that you want to talk about, guys, before we maybe move on to judging?
No, I think we've covered that. Yeah.
What about you, Dr. G? I know he's your fave.
Oh, look, I feel like there are many things that I could say, and I'm going to resist the urge for the most part. I will say that, it seems that regardless of how things are going with the senatorial support, because that's pretty sketchy, he does clear out the Senate on a number of occasions, including in 18, when he's looking at introducing this moral legislation.
Yeah.
And so he keeps the Senate in this constant state of fear of not being certain. And he picks up a position as census on enough occasions with enough opportunities to just make sure that he keeps everybody in check and fearful enough that they keep complying, which makes me think that none of this is solid, that this is all very tenuous, even late in the piece.
Okay.
And certainly when he does fall quite ill in 23.
Yes.
That becomes a huge thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he does seem to think that he's going to die. He gives out an account of the conditions of the empire to Piso. He gives his signet ring to Agrippa. Hey, buddy, old pal. He then takes on board different types of powers after that when he comes back from the brink.
Yeah.
And there's always this tension in the background between his ill health or his variable health and his attempt to sort of massage everybody in particular directions.
He's a smooth operator, I'll give you that.
Yeah, but I think he's also fighting against himself a lot because his own physical frailty seems to be the thing that really frustrates him.
I can understand that.
And he does seem to accrue, as a sort of counterpoint to that, this huge loyalty amongst the people.
Yes.
And this is how he counterbalances the tensions in the Senate and within the elite, because there is a lot of support from below.
Everyone loves a sympathy story, don't they?
And is this also, I mean, is this also a bit of a bread and circuses angle as well, in that he provides...
Yeah, definitely. He gets them out of famine on a couple of occasions. So there's a huge famine situation, I think, in 22. So just after he gets better. And he personally goes to Sicily to fix up the grain supply.
Oh, wow.
So he takes on board the... organization of the food supply. That's a particular role. He adopts that, make sure that the job gets done.
Yeah.
And this means that things crop up in terms of the reorganization of the city itself, where he starts to be implanted into all of the local religious stuff. So the reorganization of the urban space into the Vikis and the Lares now includes the genius of Augustus. So you've got like this really it's happening on many layers. Like there's this top political layer which is brutal and horrific, but it mostly focuses on the elite. And if you don't like the rich, then maybe this is not so bad, because he's basically clearing out the rich and then taking their stuff for himself. But he is looking after, it seems, the people in many respects, and they really value that.
That's great propaganda, though, isn't it? Like taking from the rich.
Yeah.
They're just hiding the fact that you're keeping it for yourself.
There was one thing I did spot that I thought was interesting. Apparently, at one point, he was considering getting rid of the grain dole because it was a great drain on resources. But he figured that eventually there'd be another Gracchus come along at some point and would be able to use that against him or someone who comes after him. So he decided to keep it in place. Again, that goes back to his political savviness. He's thinking ahead.
Yeah, and he always maintains. Yeah, like once he's feeling a little bit more comfortable in power, he really does try and maintain this outward appearance of being like a traditional Roman. So he talks about how he wears clothing that's spun by Livia herself, and he sleeps on like a camp bed, not like a nothing luxurious. Don't be silly. He's sleeping on like military equipment essentially.
Yes,
because he's tough.
This temple next to my house is just an accident, guys.
Yeah, that's right.
This fancy shield displaying all of my virtues and the laurel trees outside my house. Could happen to anybody.
Yeah, who put that there? Oh.
You guys, I'm blushing.
All right, so let us judge Augustus after talking about him.
Oh, I can only imagine this is going to go terribly.
Right, well, are we using our rounds then, are we, that we use in our podcast?
We're more than happy to, if you would like to.
Yeah, no, let's do it. I'll be fascinated to see if we think the same. Anyone listening who doesn't listen to our podcast, we rank them in 5 rounds. We have Phytius Maximus, their fighting ability; Opprobrium Crasium, how crazy they were; Successus Ultimus, how successful they were; Imago Facius, generally, do we like the look of them?
Are they sexy?
Yeah, basically. And then Tempo Completo, which was just how long they reigned, which we haven't got much to discuss on that one, really. That's just a fact.
I'm just really impressed, though, that all the rounds are genuine Latin.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it took us a long time to research those names. We're very proud of them. So Phytius, we originally, when we ranked him almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time. We scored him 12 out of 20 for his fighting ability, because he does a lot. The empire expands under him more than anyone else. But there's no getting away from the fact his damn knee kept playing up every time battle came along. And let's face it, yeah, a lot of the work was done by Agrippa. So I think we penalised him a lot there. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, look, I mean, surely like Agrippa and Augustus are like 2 peas in the same pod.
You just want to think that.
They meet young, they stick together, marry each other's
literally.
gals, stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, obviously I have to give Augustus credit for recognizing that he's not the most talented military person out there, not the most capable, as in his health isn't great, and therefore finding someone
I think we talked about that.
who can fill that role. There is a certain happiness.
This reminds me of the story where he's outside Perugia and he's just gotten better, but he's beset by gladiators and he nearly dies. And his response to that is to then kill 300 Perugian senators. Bad. It's bad.
Well,
I think this brings down his rank.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be a bit harsher because that's just me and Augustus. I feel like he deserves a 5 out of 10 from me. What's he going to get from you?
Aren't we doing it out of 20?
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. You're the other 20.
I'm the other 10.
Yeah,
maths. So I have to bump him up now. That's my job. So I think on the level of like expansion, He definitely has to get at least over 5. And for being a savvy general who knows how to put people where they need to be in order to win, except for Varus and Drusus. There will be others. That perhaps we're looking at like a 7 or an 8 at least.
So what are you going for, 7 or 8?
Can't stop you.
Yes.
Yeah, 7 or 8 then. Which one?
Ooh, okay, 7.
All right, so he gets a 12 from us in the end. Exactly where you guys were.
Ooh.
Interesting. And you two have doctorates in this, so we did all right in our first ever episode. Okay, then.
Do you guys agree with your original ranking?
I'd score him higher, personally.
I think nowadays, if we did the episode again, we might have given them another point each, maybe.
I think we consider more political fighting now with Physis Maximus.
Yeah, so
I'll probably score him an extra point, maybe. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, if we're going for politics, it's a 10 out of 10 for me.
I think no. Let's keep it to fighting.
Yeah.
Success as Ultimus can be as political success.
Yeah.
But what about his craziness then? How crazy or how much opprobrium did he cause?
Ooh. Well, okay. I do think that he, as you say, he's pretty brutal when it comes to the people he's working alongside most often with the Senate. And there are those persistent rumors about his personal life.
But I don't think that makes him crazy. I just think that makes him human.
No, it's just the craziness of his life.
Oh. I thought we were talking about like literal insanity.
No.
Because I feel like he was never insane.
Don't get me wrong, you get a lot of points if you are actually insane, but you can also get points for just general craziness in
Everyday quirkiness, we call it.
Yeah. I kind of think it because of like his younger life.
Oh, where he's a gadabout town dressing up as like a god at parties and stuff.
Yeah, and and also the prescriptions and there's just so much. There's so much drama. I kind of feel like I'm gonna give him a high score. Like, yeah, I'm gonna give him a 6. I think.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I think I'm firmly a 5.
Altogether, I think we're going to go with an 11 out of 20.
Out of 20.
Yeah.
Altogether.
11. Okay, then. We gave him 7 originally. So we went for lower.
Okay.
I think we were thinking of the Caligulas that were coming up. We didn't want to go too high.
We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Successus, then. How successful?
For the Empire. Was the Empire better? Well, there was an Empire.
For the Empire. Hugely better. It was finally here.
Well, okay, I admit he's very politically savvy. He manages to die peacefully in his bed, which is more than most of his family can say.
That's a success right there.
Yeah. Well, it is considering how many political enemies he must have made over his time.
He killed most of them.
Well, yeah, but there are children. There's always children. He does secure a fantastic successor.
No comment.
Yeah. So I'm willing to give him a 9. I'm gonna give him a 9. I'm not gonna be too stupid about it.
Okay. All right. So I think if we're looking at like in terms of like success, his contribution to the empire, then it has to be a 10.
Okay.
Because he basically puts all of the things in motion for there to be one.
Yeah.
That enables Tiberius to do anything. Tiberius has a lot to be thankful for.
Oh yeah. Okay. Whatever. All right. So it's a grand total of 19 out of 20 from us. What did you guys think?
We gave him the full 20 on this one because you don't have a Roman Empire without him. So yeah, we went full marks.
True. Okay.
Yeah, and then the last one you need to judge is his imago facius. I mean, how did he look? Were you impressed?
This is a tricky one because I feel like the statues of Augustus are not actual representations of what he really looked like.
Well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. How sexy was he in those statues?
Okay.
I always just think, if I was Livia at that party, would I have done it? And if the answer is yes.
Would you have gone to his attic? Yes.
Yeah, because, at that time, he's doing okay for himself, but he's not at the height yet. He's a bit of an up-and-comer.
All right, okay, judging on the existing statuary, I'd give him a 7. What would you give him?
Wow, all right. I mean, he's not the most sexiest of all time, I don't think, but I have to give him a 9 just for sheer charisma.
Okay, so that's a total of 16 from us.
Which we then divide by 4 because we don't weight that too highly. So that is a score of 4 you just gave him, Spermageophagus. And we gave him 4.25. Oh, it's fairly consistent
Nice.
so far.
Nice, okay, cool.
So we now have a total score for him because he gets 4 marks for how long he lasted because everything's compared to his reign.
Of course.
So I'm just going to add those up. And he scores 51 exactly, which is slightly higher than we marked him. We scored 48.25, but not too far off.
Yeah.
So
considering that Dr. G is a massive fangirl, I think it's to be expected that we would rate him.
But I've been ripped to shreds in this podcast. I mean, it's coming from all angles, really, including myself, I think.
Just wait till Tiberius. I can understand why someone might like Augustus.
I'm getting a bit nervous.
Tiberius is a tough one.
I feel like I've got some allies now. This is good.
All right, cool. Well, all right, Augustus, 51 gives me something to beat.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah.
Thank you so much for collaborating with us and allowing us to judge Augustus by your own standards. And for your insights into his life and rule.
No problem. It has been a pleasure.